What is going on, Rush Nation? Pittsy has been unfortunately ruled out for week 4 as me and my co-host look to step up in his absence. Rob, how are you, my friend?
Very good. I hadn't actually read that part. Yeah, he has been ruled out for week 4. He's taking care of business. Unfortunately, he can't help us with our business this evening. So yeah, it's been good. Been a very wet day, very wet week. Just happy to get away from sorting out waterproofs for children and just general operation of a children's activity centre and get down to some fantasy football.
Definitely. And without any waiting around, here is Thursday Night Throwback. This week's Thursday game saw the Miami Dolphins face the Cincinnati Bengals in a battle of the draft classes. So we had Burrow versus Tua, Waddle versus Chase, and of course, who could forget Tyler Boyd versus Tyreek Hill from the 2016 draft class. So it was an all right game, I think, actually. I watched it in 40 this morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
Obviously, you'll get into it in a sec, but it's a shame what happened to Tua. And I think it was an all right game.
Yeah, I mean, Thursday night football doesn't really set the card light compared to some of the things you see on a Sunday night, but I think it's quite difficult. You've got a game in isolation, and normally when a Sunday night game is not going well, you've got a few other ones to choose from, and they can just flick to the one that's a bit more entertaining. Whereas this, you stick with it for the whole thing. It was an all right game. It was an all right game.
Nothing that set the world alight as such, but for as far as Thursday night goes, teams on short weeks and things like that, it was better than some.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone's read Nathan's Fantasy Focus report. He did say that the Bengals would do well in this game. They want to let people know that they are still there after quite a poor start. So let's talk about some of the offensive positions first. We'll cover quarterbacks. Tua left the game early, as we know. Scary looking impact. That slam to the floor. It doesn't matter if you slow it down. It still looks like it's quite a quick, powerful move. And he stayed down, stretched off the field. Just quite uncomfortable viewing. And there were quite a few NFL players who came out saying, just stop showing the replays. Stop it. It's not needed. We'll cover more in the injury report section. Before his exit, he had 8 completions on 14 passes, 110 yards, and an interception. And then Teddy Bridgewater came in and, like I said, did a reasonable job for such short notice. 14 completions, 23 passes, 193 yards, and a touchdown. But then there was a late interception at the end, and that kind of ruled out any real chance of a Dolphins comeback once the Bengals managed to get that lead. Comparatively, Joe Burrow, solid game, reasonable amount of protection from his line, which is something that some of us were worried about after seeing him get sacked numerous times in the first 3 weeks. 1 sack this week, not bad. 20 completed passes out of 31, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that, the late pass and touchdown drive to Hayden Hurst. Everyone loved that because, we've been saying it was about time that he gets a touchdown, and he got quite a lot of involvement in this game. So you're going to come on to that next anyway. So go ahead, Lewis. What we got in the other positions?
So let's start with the Bengals anyway, and it was T. Higgins that led the way. He had 7 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown. Jamar Chase had 4 catches for 81. One of them from Tyler Boyd, I think, for 23 yards, actually, not from Joe Burrow. And Hayden Hurst also scored, as you mentioned, as did Joe Mixon, but he only picked up 74 scrimmage yards last night. Moving on to Miami quickly, Mostert is clearly the lead back there. He was the leading rusher last night. He had 2 yards less in receptions than Edmonds, but 81 scrimmage yards for Mostert. Edmonds had the receiving touchdown. Tyreek Hill put on a show again, 160 yards on 10 catches. I think that was 14 targets he had. So prolific catch rate and an unreal amount of yards. Waddle was questionable leading up to the game, but he did play. He caught 2 for 39 yards. So not amazing for your fantasy teams there with Waddle, but it was to be expected, I think. Tyreek led the night with points, 25.9 points in PPR. Higgins, 25.4. So even though he had less yards, it was the touchdown that kept him up there. Mixon was third with 17.4 points, but he was saved by his touchdown.
And we've just had a comment in the section saying, "Oh, bloody Waddle" as well. Yeah, tough for some, especially after how well he's done in the last few weeks. But you've got to expect some down days, especially when you've got someone like Cheetah who is going to rip Eli Apple apart again. Something that Nathan predicted in the Fantasy Focus one. Eli Apple did not stand a chance. It's just a shame that the Dolphins didn't come away with the win. That Edmonds touchdown. Oh, that Edmonds touchdown. Did you see it? The underhand pass.
Yeah, very nice.
Very nice. And then, just knocking through some of the defenders. I think he got through 3 defenders before he got to that line as well. So I feel like that was my play of the day, that Edmonds touchdown there. Defenses, like a low scoring game. Well, certainly on the Miami Dolphins side of things. And that seems to be a bit of a standard for Thursday Night Football. Bengals came out of this with the more impressive look in terms of stats. 1 sack, blocked kick, 2 interceptions. And then the Dolphins just seem to struggle in terms of the big defensive plays, like 1 sack, as we mentioned previously, and not a whole lot else. It kind of just started totaling up, especially when Mixon started getting some of those runs in. But yeah, Dolphins, we've seen it can be high-scoring games for them. I think they've just got to take a few things away and think about what's going to happen next week.
Yeah, I definitely thought the Dolphins would be able to rough the Bengals up a little bit more defensively. And it, like you say, the Bengals O-line was actually decent this week. So
yeah.
Got Burrow some protection finally, and he had a better game, and yeah.
Well, the O-line actually had a role to play in Mixon's touchdown as well, didn't they? They got him across the line. I think that's what he needed. Right. Well, we move on to our second section, which is injury report. And as we've already covered several times, we've got to talk about Tua. That was a big takeaway from this game. He left with the team at the end of the game, sometime afterwards with a neck brace on. So there wasn't any need for him to stay overnight. Initial results have come back negative, but they're still waiting on an MRI scan. So that's going to be the real consideration here. Like, are they going to give him some time out after what we all know is 2 concussions in 2 weeks? Like, despite what the official reports say, that hit he got in week 3, that was enough to really should have ruled someone out from that. But again, in week 4, it's definitely not one that you want to be seeing, and potentially there could be some repercussions from this. We'll just have to see.
Yeah. So he shouldn't have really gone back into the game, I don't think, in week 3.
Mm-hmm.
But we're having that second hit like he did last night, and it could open up a whole new can of worms there. But let's go on to the quarterbacks anyway. You've covered 2. Zach Wilson, he has been medically cleared, and it looks like he will start on Sunday as long as there's no setbacks or issues beforehand. Mac Jones with his ankle. There was pictures showing him being supported to the locker room. No practice Wednesday or Thursday. Brian Hoyer will likely get the start, at least for this week, until we know a bit more about Mac Jones. Justin Herbert's ribs injury. He was limited Wednesday, which is to be expected after his injection last week, but he practiced in full today. So wheels up for Justin Herbert if you've got him on your fantasy teams. Jameis Winston is obviously in London. It's an earlier kickoff. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday and Friday, actually. We've seen that one come in now. And he's doubtful for Sunday. So it looks like Andy Dalton will step in as one of the more experienced backups in the league.
Yeah, and he can do a decent job. Like, he's had plenty of experience in different teams, and the Saints will be no different. We'll see what happens. We've had a comment in there. With Wilson getting more starts, do you think Elijah Moore gets more looks in? What do you think?
So he's got. It's an interesting one for me because I was quite high on Garrett Wilson as well when he was coming out, and he's done a great job so far. But Wilson does have that chemistry with Elijah Moore from last year. And it would be great to see Elijah Moore more involved, I think, than he has been with Flacco anyway. It just depends if the Jets are going to throw as much.
Yeah, the volume has definitely been there with Flacco, hasn't it? And like a high number of passes. We may actually cover one of those other players later on in this show. So let's have a look at the running backs next. In terms of running backs and injuries this week, it's been a big one. We're going to start with Deandre Swift. Ankle injury through the last 2 weeks has been bothering him. We've seen him play in some games with varying levels of success. He's dealing with a shoulder issue now that he picked up against the Vikings in week 3. So it's looking like he could miss time. And as we've all seen on many waiver wires this week, Jamal Williams has been the one to pick up. He will probably fill that void left by Swift after a great start in the first 3 weeks. Swift did not practice on Thursday. He's not expected to play on Friday. Lock in Williams if you can. And that goes for some way to for Pitsy's flex of the week last week as well, because I believe he chose Jamal last week, didn't he?
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook next. Also picked up a shoulder injury in the week 3 game with Detroit. Didn't return to the field. There's been a recurring issue having dislocated the shoulder previously, and I believe the chaps on the Dynasty show said that it's a permanently torn labrum or labrum. I believe it's labrum, isn't it? So they were worried that like any hit could cause an issue. But he did log a full practice in London on Thursday, so he's expected to play. So we can only apologise to those who have Mattison as a handcuff, or should we say, sorry, you may just be biding your time now before that shoulder pops out again. AJ Dillon with a knee. He was limited Wednesday. First time in the injury report this season, but he was back in full practice on Thursday. We're expecting to have him back in. Same with Miles Sanders, a limited practice on Wednesday with a hip injury, full practice on Thursday, and is expected to play this week. Jonathan Taylor did not practice Wednesday, and we can see a bit of a pattern here coming on. Full practice Thursday. It could just been a day off, so maybe hold to Naheem Hines shares for just a little bit longer. However, this is hard for me to say. after a couple of seasons as well, we're expecting a bit more time for Christian McCaffrey, but a quad injury has appeared on the report now, and it's believed to be a bit more serious than the previous injuries that he's been on the list with. He didn't practice Wednesday, Thursday. He's listed questionable this week for the Cardinals. Not a positive note for those who drafted CMC within the first 3 picks of any redraft league this year.
Yeah, I've got my fair share of him again. And let's just crack on with the wide receivers anyway. It's another shed load of players for this week. But let's start with Keenan Allen, who's got the hamstring issue. He missed week 2. And even though he was limited before last week, he also missed week 3. Wednesday, he was a limited participant. Thursday, he was limited and seen leaving early with a trainer. So read into that whatever you want, really. He could return on Sunday against Houston, I think, but we need to keep an eye on that one. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he was actually ruled out today for Sunday. He was considered day-to-day after a sprained ankle he picked up in week 3. DJ Chark also never practiced on Thursday for the Lions. So who's your next man up there? Maybe Josh Reynolds.
Who is also questionable.
Yeah, well, there we go.
Yeah.
Devonta Smith is dealing with a groin issue. He was limited Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday. They got a big game the Eagles have against the Jaguars, who are in form at the minute. It's a similar injury to George Kittle, who missed obviously 2 weeks himself. Michael Thomas, another one that has been ruled out today for Sunday. They obviously face the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday in London. He left the game against the Panthers in week 3. Didn't practice Wednesday. Didn't practice Thursday. So if Jameis doesn't go, who will Andy Dalton be throwing the ball to? But a bit of good news after this, and it's Michael Gallup. So he logged some participation last week before being ruled out, but he has been a full participant in practice all week. So he should make his season debut in week 4.
Gotta say that almost like I was considering one of the Dallas Cowboy wide receivers for my flex of the week. So Michael Gallup's return, whilst great for some fantasy rosters, wasn't great for my flex of the week. So I've moved elsewhere for that one. Finally, tight ends. We've already talked about how difficult it is for Detroit Lions to think about any passing options. TJ Hawkinson did not practice on Wednesday, so a tight end option could be struggling as well. This is a new foot injury. He was limited on Thursday. It does put him on track to play in some capacity against the Seahawks, so it is going to be a walking wounded offensive group for the Lions this weekend. Dawson Knox, he was limited Wednesday and Thursday. Watch out for his status today. It's still a risky play for me, considering how little involvement he's had in terms of practice over the last few weeks. Dalton Schultz as well, also not worth the risk in my opinion. He's been limited so far this week, and he missed week 3 as well.
Yeah, so let's with that being said, let's jump into our third segment, which is weak points.
Yeah, so we've had a few weeks now, so we should be able to see a bit more of standardization with the average fantasy points throughout the weeks, because the more games there are, the averages get a bit closer together. So we should be getting a bit more of a picture now. So have we had any changes at the tops in terms of team weaknesses for quarterbacks? And funnily enough, the weakest at the moment, and this was done before last night's game, was the Dolphins. So they were playing the Bengals. We saw what happened. Like T. Higgins got a really good game. Chase not as much, and Boyd was quite surprising as well. So yeah, they were the top of the list. Ravens are second with 25.1, and they are at Buffalo this week. So Josh Allen, if you weren't already starting him in the roster, what you're doing, he's going to QB2 so far this season. He's setting it alight, and it looks to be a great matchup for him this week. Lions, 23.9 points. They are against Seattle. Geno Smith's just been doing Geno things, quite standard. I reckon we could be seeing a big score from any passing option in that team, and it'll be Geno that does the throw in.
Yeah, and the weakest against running back, you've just mentioned the Lions. Funny enough, this is them also. So with 27.5 points against Seattle, like you said, we've got Kenneth Walker in the fray now a little bit, but Seattle, they just haven't got much going for them in terms of the running game so far. The Lions somewhat limited Dalvin Cook before his injury, even though Alex Mattison scored. It's hard to predict which Seahawks running back, if any, is going to put up big numbers this week. Mm-hmm. Second is the Texans, just behind with 27.3 against the Chargers. Now, Brandon Staley has already said that he needs to give Eckler more touches. He said that this week. So this could be Austin Eckler week. And he's been a little bit underwhelming so far. But third is the Raiders, 25.4 points to the running back position. They face the Broncos. So it's another backfield share. The Raiders have been underwhelming in general so far, and if the Broncos get ahead, Williams and Gordon are more than capable of running down the clock. The head coach there, Hackett, is a bit questionable with his game management and play calling and stuff so far, but Melvin Gordon could be a decent flex maybe for his red zone work he's been getting, but it's hard not to start Javonte if you've got him on your team.
Probably spent a round 2 pick on him as well, so you kind of want to, get your money's worth in there.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Gordon came up as questionable on some injury reports this week for Denver, so that is one to watch out for as well. It could be a full role for Williams, so could be feasting against the third weakest defense against running backs. Weakest against wide receivers, it's the Ravens against Buffalo. So their secondary is beating up, as we've already known. Diggs and Davis look to be locked in pretty well. Josh Allen has been setting this league alike, and they need a bounce back against what happened with Miami last week. So yeah, expect a lot to be put on the Ravens this week. The Rams are second, and they are at the Niners divisional matchup. Jimmy G. We don't know what we're going to get with Jimmy G at the moment. Yeah, I think it could have been a different picture, but it's likely going to be Deebo Samuel who gets quite a lot of this role. Although I've got a soft spot for my one of my boys, Juwan Jennings. He's there, third option. Well, we can see what happens with him. And then Commanders, 41.7 points, and they're at the Cowboys. So great week for CD Lamb last week. Noah Brown's doing well. In Gallup's absence, Gallup could be back this week. So Noah Brown was the guy I was looking at for Flex of the Week. Hey, Jennings. There you go. Got him in the comments as well. Got some other fans out there as well. Gallup's back. So Noah Brown may see a bit of a drop, but he's doing well. He could stand up on his own here, I think.
Yeah, him and Cooper Rush have got something going. He's getting a lot of targets, and he is doing well. If Dalton Schultz is ruled out again, there's no reason why all three of them can't get a piece of the pie, I don't think. Especially against a team that lets up so many against wide receivers. But let's jump into tight ends, and it's the Arizona Cardinals that lead the way with 20 points. They face the Panthers, who it's anybody's guess who their tight end one is. Potentially LaVisca. He could line up inside a little bit now. He's active, but every team has put up points against the Cards, and it could finally be a time for the Cardinals to actually get a nice win under the belt. Second is the Falcons, 17.2 points against tight ends. Now, they face the Browns this week. David Njoku had that breakout week 3 after obviously being paid in the off-season, and there's no doubt he'd love to keep that going, and so would his fantasy managers. Colts are third against the Titans. Austin Hooper, he's been underwhelming so far, and I think that's just going to be a game for the running backs, to be fair.
Yeah. Or Jet Swain.
Maybe for a sneaky touchdown here. Yeah.
Maybe for a sneaky touchdown, yeah. Lock him in for DFS lineups. So our final segment this week, we'll move on, is to Flex of the Week. Oh, I've got my pick first. Amazing. Right. Knowing my luck, after Zay Jones went off on week 3 and he was my week 2 pick, it's probably going to be Aguilar again this week. So let's watch out for that and see if Hoyer can help him out. However, my real choice for this week is the Rookie 101, consensus Rookie 101 from this year, is Breece Hall. 11 targets last week, 6 completions. So we could expect more in the same kind of game plan as what we had last time. I feel as though with Zach Wilson coming back, he could be a really good safety valve. Wilson needs to get back up to speed. Breece is going to be great for the dump off. I think that's going to be important. And the reason I've chose Breece Hall, and people might be saying, well, it's a bit of a cheap pick, this one, is because actually Michael Carter has been the lead back, has been denoted as the lead back for the first 3 weeks of the season. And it's only been in week 4 that Breece has actually seen more snaps than Carter. So he's starting to catch up now. He's starting to overtake. This is going to be really the week to test him out as well. It's a weak Steelers offense against a decent Jets defense, which means there's going to be a lot of turnovers, maybe a lot of punts, which means that Jets offense is going to be out there a lot more and putting up numbers against a tiring Steelers D, who is missing TJ Watt now. He's gone out on IR. That he was a huge factor in that D doing well. They've got to shift some pieces around to deal with it, and that could actually benefit the Jets' offensive game on the whole. So that's some thinking, thoughts about that. As that Steelers D gets tired, I reckon we could get some big runs in here from Breece. And also, if Carter's rotating in, it keeps Breece Hall fresh as well. So when you've got a team against you who's considered the 7th most fantasy points running backs, I think you've got to sit up and take notice for that. So Breece Hall is my flex of the week this week.
Yeah, I completely agree. It seems like the tide is sort of turning for the Jets now at running back. I've also gone for a running back, and this could be surprising because it's Devin Singletary. So he looks like he's sort of got his role there in Buffalo as the lead back, but his snap share rose to 73% last week from sort of mid-50s the first 2. And it's the receiving game where he came up trumps. And this is why it intrigues me, because he had 11 targets last week and he caught 9 of them, 78 yards and a receiving touchdown. And they're facing the Ravens this week. So we mentioned with the Ravens being not very good against the quarterback or the wide receiver earlier, even if his rushing isn't there, Josh Allen loves a reliable target. Look at Dawson Knox last year in the end zone. I think he caught 10 touchdowns. Devin Singletary could be that guy.
Yeah.
He says about the Ravens secondary being beat up. And after last week's production from Singletary, I don't think it's a bad play at all.
No, I like it. I've liked Singletary. I think he's involved a bit more in the backfield committee at the moment as well. But James Cook's a rookie. You know, Moss has still got to prove himself after some fluctuating performances last year. I think Singletary could be a good shout. And yeah, I like this matchup. I think Ravens could be conceding some points to Singletary here as well. We haven't got him here, but Pittsy has sent his pick in via video link this week, like yourself on week 2. So without further ado, here is Pitsy's Flex of the Week.
What's up, Rush Nation? Pitsy's here, and I have my Flex of the Week for you. It is Chris Olave, wide receiver, New Orleans Saints. This season, the rookie has started the season with quite a bit of a bang. Week 2, he got 13 targets, 80 yards, and week 3, he ended up getting 13 targets with 147 yards. So, pretty good. Granted, he hasn't got a touchdown just yet, but this week, the wide receivers in his team, Thomas and Landry, are a bit banged up. So there's potential for him to explode this week and hopefully get that touchdown as well for you.
As we know now as well, since that's been recorded, I'd expect Michael Thomas has been ruled out. So Chris Olave is potentially the number 1 on that team.
And yeah, look, Landry is unreliable as well. At least he has been in previous teams. I think this could be a good pick. It may be the best of all, but I think our players do have a good chance here.
It could be the best of all, but I think he's probably gone with the safest one. But
yeah, yeah.
He's not here to give me grief after, so it's fine to say that. Storm also says nice pick, Pittsy. But that is it for week 4.
Yeah, so we shall see you next week, hopefully with a full complement. And until then, keep rushing.